That's fancy. So I'm Allison. I'm an alcoholic. So before I get started, I'm going to act like a director a little bit. I know you guys don't get that. But if some people, like 5 or 6 people, could come and sit up here, because you guys are packed way back there, and I have to look over across empty chairs, and it's really awkward for me. Thank you guys. I appreciate that. Man, girls, you're letting the guys show you up. Thank you. So I'm Allison. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is May 13th, 2006. Whenever I used to listen to people come and share, actually at this podium in this church, I would hear that number, and I would hear, hear the year that they got sober, and the year that how old they were when they got sober. And so I was trying to figure all that out. So I got sober when I was 23, just so you guys can pay attention. I'm 32 now, so again, you don't have to do the math. I only drank heavily for about 2 years. I had a very, very quick drinking history, but it was enough. Whenever the first couple years I came in, I spent a lot of time with young people in AA. I was heavily involved with NICCPA, the North Carolina Conference of Young People in AA, and one of the things that we would do on our campouts and conferences and everything was we would play games, and we would hang out and drink coffee and everything, and I would hear some of their stories of what happened. And these are 16-year-olds when they get sober, and 14-year-olds and 23-year-olds when they get sober, and man, and they have done some really, really rough stuff. And I would compare myself a little bit to them, because I never smoked crack naked in the middle of a room. I don't have war stories like that, but I never really questioned whether or not I was an alcoholic, because by some miracle I was able to take the first step really well. And I don't think it was any one person. I don't think it was any one experience that helped this along. I had some kind of a spiritual experience, and I had an ongoing spiritual experience to be able to convince me that that I have this physical allergy, and I know exactly what happens whenever I start drinking. I have to keep drinking, and I saw myself changing my life around and changing my friends around so that I would be able to get more alcohol. I know exactly how it feels whenever it's last call at a bar, and I have a full drink, and so I don't order anymore. And then as the next 10 minutes goes past, and my drink gets lower and lower and lower, and I know that I can't order anymore, and all the stores are closed. It's Saturday night or Sunday morning, and I can't get any more beer for another however long. My level of discontent gets higher and higher as that drink gets lower and lower and lower. And that's the thought that has me absolutely convinced that I'm an alcoholic, that I wasn't just some crazy kid who couldn't adapt, that I wasn't just someone who was depressed, that I really cannot drink without alcohol affecting me. So I'm going to get started with my actual story. I grew up as an Army brat, which meant that I moved around a lot. I moved probably every 2 to 4 years my entire life up until now. It was really a great childhood. My parents really took advantage of living around. I lived overseas, and I went to international schools, and we went traveling around, and I got to see a lot of really cool things, and I got to meet a lot of really cool people, and I love it. I still love it. I still crave that. But it also meant that I never really got any kind of footing. As wonderful parents as my parents were, they're also human, and they're not exactly the most emotionally connected people. And so, the only foundation that I had, the only roots that I had, my family, I wasn't able to get whatever it was that I needed. And so I felt really lost. And I don't think that I'm an alcoholic because that. I think that, that's just part of my story. But I felt very, very lost. I kept changing homes and changing schools, and I felt very comfortable with, being in a situation where everyone else is speaking a different language. Because, and I've gone back and traveled and everything, and I still feel most like myself whenever I'm in that kind of a situation. I think there are a lot of other people who have grown up in my situation who feel that same way. But it's really taught me that I had to rely on myself. The problem was that I felt like I was a really, really weak person, and I couldn't rely on myself. So I'm kind of in a catch-22 there. I couldn't rely on anyone else around me. I couldn't rely on my family or my teachers or friends because I didn't have any friends. And I couldn't rely on myself because I felt like I couldn't do anything for myself. I had really low self-esteem. Actually, I just remembered a story that my sponsor kind of pinpointed a little while ago. Is I had a really hard time making friends, and I felt sorry for myself all the time. And so, one thing that I would do is, I would go in the woods at recess and would play by myself with a stick in the ground, and some other girls would come by from another school, and they would see that I'm all lonely and showing off how lonely I am, and they would ask me to play with them, and I would go, no, I'm good. And then they'd ask me again, are you sure? Because we're just playing over here. No, that's fine. I'm going to play by myself with my stick. I really just wanted to feel sorry for myself. I really just wanted other people to feel sorry for me. And really, as they were walking away, I'm just kind of thinking, well, this didn't work out the way I planned. But obviously I'm not happy now. But, and I don't know what I had expected or what I wanted out of that situation, but I wanted people to feel sorry for me. That's kind of an ongoing thing. The reason why I remember that is because, things have been happening with work, and I feel left out. And so I've reverted back to that 9-year-old kid playing in the woods with my stick. And so these are character defects that crop up again and again and again. But, drinking was a part of my life then. Like I said, I grew up overseas, and so my parents had wine with them, and we would go on tours. And my perception of what drinking was, or what adulthood was, sitting around dinner for 3 hours outside and having multiple bottles of wine and just sitting there and talking. And I really always expected alcohol to be a part of my life. I would have sips of my parents' wine and stuff, and every once in a while I remember getting buzzed. And that's really what I wanted. Everything felt like it was okay, and I saw everything be okay with my parents. They all had friends. That's how people gathered around, and that's how I knew that I would be an adult and everything would be okay. So I already had expectations of how things would happen as I grew up, and that happened a lot. I continued to not have friends, and I continued to have expectations of how things would be as I grew up. When I was in high school, I expected things to be like Archie comics, with letter jackets and multiple dates and going to the big football game and being a cheerleader and that sort of thing. I don't know if any girls are my age. I also expected it to be like Sweet Valley High. Thank you. There's one person. And that is not how things panned out. I went to 3 different high schools. No one knew me by the end of it, on purpose. But this all changed whenever I got to college. In my junior year, I went to go study abroad. And oddly enough, being in a foreign country was really whenever things kind of fell into place for me. Whenever, in Bill's story, in the very first page, he talks about how he had arrived. That's how I felt. All of a sudden, things just clicked. I went overseas. I felt more like myself over there than I had any time at home. I felt more comfortable. I had people to hang out with. I had people to close down the bar with. I was 21, so I could, drink legally. I could be an adult and I could be cultured, and it was really exciting. I was able to fulfill all these expectations that I had of my life, and all of a sudden, just things clicked, and it was really good. It's what I called like the golden age of my drinking, and I think everyone has that, where just you look back on that. That's the part of your drinking where you just romanticize and you keep on trying to get back to over and over and over again. And mine lasted for a little while. Even whenever things were really, really good, things were starting to fall apart a little bit too. I wasn't able to make it to class on time. And I had all these expectations of like being a really good student and learning a lot and really taking advantage of this really awesome situation, but I couldn't get out of bed. I got a really cool British boyfriend named Magnus Slingsby, and I could almost understand everything that he said. And then he dumped me. I couldn't pay for myself. I could never. I would go out with friends, and I would go skiing with friends, and I would forget my passport. Just little things where you start to see where things are falling apart as the year went on. I noticed that I had to go out more frequently. I had to go out and let loose and party at least once a week. And for me, that meant, absolutely get wasted. Now, I didn't think of that. I thought I had to go to a club and let loose, but really, I just needed to get absolutely wasted once a week. And then I could drink, during the week a little bit here and there, and be the mild-mannered student, cultured person that I expected myself to be. But then, that time that I had to, in between the times where I had to get absolutely wasted, got shorter and shorter and shorter really quickly. So that by the time I got back home, I moved back to the States, it was pretty much every other day that I had to get absolutely wasted. I had to go out to the bar and get drunk, and then the next day I would stay at home and I would recuperate. And that pattern lasted a good long time. The difference between getting absolutely drunk and then the days where I recuperated, there wasn't much difference between them towards the end. I would sit at home and watch TV and drink a lot of beer or wine or vodka or whatever I had. But I on those days, whenever I would just sit there and watch TV, I would watch Law and Order marathons over and over and over again. And I would get so sick of myself and so wrapped up in myself that eventually I had to go to the bar. And then I really, I drank and drive because I was the designated driver, because I had a car. And things would get crazy, and I would get lost and go driving around, and so then by the time I made it home again, I had to have another day of recuperating, which meant staying out at home in my hole, watching Law and Order and drinking, and that all that happened really quickly. By the time I made it back home and I was in my senior year. I was put on academic probation my fall semester of my senior year. Was magically brought back into the school for my spring semester, although it was going to be a semester late graduating, and then I dropped out the spring semester, at spring break of my senior year, because I couldn't get it together. When I talk about how I couldn't wake up in the morning, I could not wake up in the morning. And this has been an ongoing thing for me as well. I still have problems with waking up in the morning. I mean, I had such high anxiety that I couldn't just go to sleep. I had to force myself to basically drink myself to drink. I never blacked out. I remember just about everything that I've done drinking, which meant that for someone with, social anxiety and fear of what people are thinking of you, and someone who's trying to monitor their walk and their laugh and change it according to who's around them, looking back on all the stuff that I did when I was drinking caused severe anxiety, and I would just I would sit there and I couldn't face the day anymore. I absolutely understand why we can't face reality and we can't own up to the things that we've done, because at some point I just started thinking, I can't be such a terrible person. It really can't be all my fault. Something has to be someone else's fault. And so I started to convince myself that, it was all someone else's fault that I'm dropping out of school, or that, I have to, when I wake up in the morning, I have to pull the covers over my head and force myself to go back to sleep, even though I am not tired anymore, just because I could not face the day. I couldn't face one more thing that I had missed. That phone call on my answering machine, that I just know that it was someone calling to ask me where I was because I had missed something else. At this point, my parents, I hadn't told anyone that I was graduating, or I wasn't graduating, and so, my parents were talking about, getting hotel rooms, and, what am I going to do after I graduate and all this other stuff, and I'm, hiding the fact that I'm dropped out of school and wasting their money, and I just didn't know how to handle any kind of confrontation, any kind of reality. And so what happened was I think I would have gone on drinking for a long time, because if left to my own devices, because I couldn't make up my mind. I didn't have the energy to say, you know what, I have to do something about this. This is obviously a problem. I just have to do something. I really had so little faith in myself that I couldn't make up my mind one way or the other. I knew something was wrong. I had people in my life present the idea to me that I was drinking. There was a problem with my drinking, and maybe I should do something about it. So that idea was rolling around in my head, and I couldn't do anything about it. So what happened was I dropped out of school, and my mom had an idea of what was going on, and so I moved back in with her, and she allowed me to do that only if I went to an alcohol counselor. And she came up with a couple of rules for me living with her. And I almost followed them. It took me a long time before I realized that I did not follow them at all. I really thought that I had. But, I had to, I was allowed to drink, but I had to go to meetings every day. And that was my introduction to AA. I was not allowed to drink and drive. I had to be home every night at 10 o'clock, which I still think is just ridiculous. Because, the bars close at 2. That's 4 hours of potential drinking time that's completely wasted. What am I supposed to do at home between 10 and 2? I mean, even for someone not drinking, what is a 23-year-old supposed to do at home between 10 and 2? It's ridiculous. And I understand the rationale behind it. They explained it to me. It's because my mom would sit up worrying all night. But, that's her fault. She shouldn't be sitting up worrying about me anyway. That's her choice, to worry about me. So that's what happened. And that went on for a month, and I almost went to meetings every night. I did go to meetings, and I did meet people. There are still people that I met during that time that I still know, and they're still sober, and that's been awesome to see. We were all crazy. I was just the one drinking. I almost went drinking. I almost went to meetings every night. On the nights that I didn't go to meetings, I still left the house. I didn't go to a bar, but I went to the library. That's another part of me. I had to hide from reality so much that if alcohol wasn't there, then I would read a book. And that's, I would absorb myself into a book so I couldn't see anyone around me. And that's how I kind of faced the world. I know people have everything. People have video games, they have TV, they have, people, they have shopping, they have working out, they have all these other things that they use to hide away from reality. And those were mine, reading and drinking. I even brought books to the bar with me. Yeah, during this time, when I was drinking and going to meetings, I would bring Living Sober to bars. And I'm telling you, if you're trying to get a guy to buy you drinks at a bar, don't bring Living Sober with you. It is a good icebreaker, but somehow they don't buy you drinks. So yeah, I for some reason I wasn't able to stay sober. And so the alcohol counselor and my mom, said something needs to be done. Obviously, you're not making a choice to do anything about it, so we're going to send you to rehab. So my last drink was something like the weekend before I went off to rehab, and it was at my brother's graduation from Paris Island. He had some of the same problems that I had, but his solution was to join the Marines. He had dropped out of school at the same time and everything. And so we went to his graduation from boot camp, and that night, that day, we went out to the beach, and I remember trying to explain to my brother what was going on. I still have napkins of my ramblings, my letters to my brother while he was at boot camp that I wrote when I was at the bar. Something's going on, I have no idea what's going on, everyone's telling me that I'm an alcoholic, and then the words kind of just drop off. I don't get it. But yeah, so I remember sitting there with my brother and trying to explain to him what was going on and thinking, I know where every bar is on this beach. Every single one. Without walking around, without surveying the situation or anything, I can sense where the alcohol is. And if I could escape, I would be there. Johnny was explaining that to Johnny, and he just goes, if there's one thing I've learned throughout this situation, is that I can do anything I put my mind to. And I just went, no, that doesn't make any sense. That I cannot do this. I cannot do anything. I cannot get sober. I can't decide to get sober. I don't even know if I want to get sober, but I'm not going to think about it. Because if I have to think about it, then I know that definitely something's wrong, and I definitely can't do it. I can't wake up in the morning. I can't go to class. I can't go to work. I can't call someone. I can't check my voicemail. I can't wash the vomit stains from my car doors on both sides. I also had to let people drive my car sometimes. So you had the passenger side and you had the driver's side. I couldn't take a shower. I couldn't do the most basic things to help me function as a human being. And I didn't know what the solution to that was. I mean, drinking was my solution for that for a while, because that was the thing that would help me talk to people and help me feel normal and help me feel like I was finally a 21-year-old person who's not hiding out in the library reading a book, you know? And then it just stopped working. It made things even worse. It made me less human. And so that night I had to prove to my family just how terrible things were and that there was an actual problem. So I ran away from the hotel and I went across the parking lot to a Mexican restaurant, and that was my last drink. You know, my mom driving up and down the strip trying to find me because, you know, I was AWOL. And finally walking in and seeing me ordering a buttery nipple on ice. And I turned around and saw her and I offered to buy her a drink. And she told me she would like to bash my head into the bar. And that's how, you know, that's how miserable her life was at that point. So about 2 days later, I was in rehab. It was not the most profound experience. It was a pretty normal experience. My last drinking experience, I always felt I kind of missed out on something because, you know, I was in college and I never went to frat parties. I never went to keggers. I missed out on so many experiences. And my drinking career was just a waste. But my plan was I was going to go to rehab and I was going to get my life together and maybe graduate from college and get a job and maybe, you know, pay off my loans and get out of debt and learn how to support myself. And then maybe I would go back to drinking. You know, it wasn't so much that, like, I'm going to wait until I graduate. I'm not going to wait until wait until I feel better. I'm not going to wait until people get off my back. I'm going to wait until I can take care of myself. And then I'll go back and be a normal person again. But, I mean, luckily I was able to start to have some spiritual experiences through that. In rehab, I loved rehab. It was so much fun. I was out in the mountains and the foothills, and I was in a farmhouse with like 7 other girls, something like that, and there were dogs and there were horses back here, and you had a pond where you can go fishing, and it was so much fun. I got to go to class and like take notes and be all studious. And the funny thing was, I still couldn't function. I still couldn't wake up in the morning. I still couldn't eat. I still couldn't turn in my homework. And I was talking to my counselor about, you know, why I can't do these things. I feel so helpless. And she turned around and she goes, You can't do anything, but God can. And I was shocked. I had never heard anyone said that before. You know, all the time whenever I said I can't really do anything, all the years where I'm feeling sorry for myself and I'm getting other people to feel sorry for me, everyone's telling me, you know, you can do anything that you put your mind to. Just do it. Stop thinking about it and just do it. Hoo-ah. You know, and I never really felt like I could. And this is the first time someone said, you know what, you're not crazy. All these feelings of dysfunction that you're feeling, you're right. It's a completely legitimate feeling to have. You're absolutely right. You are not taking crazy pills. You know, you're not only is there something wrong with you, but there is something that can help you. There is someone that can help you, and that's God. It's not you. It's not your family. It's not friends. It's not a boyfriend. It's not school. It's not any of these things. It's God. And that was a shock. The other thing was that that happened was I realized through taking all these classes that I had actually, you know, I thought I didn't really have a whole lot of problems because we're all convinced that we don't really have a whole lot of problems. We didn't cause so much destruction as all that. And then I was young. I had never been arrested. I had never stolen anything except for a car or a credit card or, you know, it's so easy to justify these things. But I didn't think that anything had happened to me. And then I realized that I had been hospitalized and for a week. And while I was overseas, after a week of drinking really, really hard, I was hospitalized for a week and put on an IV just in case I had to have surgery, and I wasn't even able to eat. And because I was in a foreign country, I still don't know exactly what was wrong with me. But, you know, going through these classes and everything, they described gastrointestinalitis. It was basically my stomach hurt a lot, and my appendix became inflamed. And probably what happened was that I drank myself into the hospital. And an ongoing problem, not just, you know, that I became dehydrated or I got alcohol poisoning or anything like that. I had something that took a week to recover from, that my body couldn't handle. So that made it click too, that I was causing a whole lot of harm to myself. So I was, from there I was sent to a halfway house. It was suggested to me that I do not have any self-discipline, that I can't do things for myself, and so it was suggested that I go to a halfway house. And so I was sent here to the Bethany house. When I lived there for 11 months. For those of you who don't know, it's a 6-month program. I really couldn't take care of myself. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I got to go to a 50-year anniversary. I got to separate myself from all the crazy that is my family, and I got to focus on myself. I humbled myself, and I got a job working in fast food, and I learned how to show up on time and do my chores, and be responsible for something. I didn't have a home group during that time because I really was expecting to leave after a year, but my house became that thing that was bigger than myself. That's where I learned how to be responsible for the other girls that are there, make sure that the house is functioning. And at one point, there are 8 beds in the house, and at one point, one weekend, 5 people left. So there was just the 2 of us, and it was me and Angie, and who also came in about the same time that I did. And for a good month, it was just me and Angie in this house. And because, as a punishment, we had to do all the chores. There's just the 2 of us. We had to do all the chores every night. Top to bottom. Yeah, I know you girls there. And I learned how to, be responsible. That house was, by the end of that house was mine, and I was proud of it. And I really did try to help other girls, as they started to come back in, I really did try to help them and give back some of the lessons that I had learned, because I learned that all this stuff that I'm gathering in my head, all these lessons that I'm learning, all these things, it's no good to me if I just kind of hold on to it by myself. Like, I have gone through some stuff, and I've learned how to do some stuff. And if I just hold on to it, then it's kind of a big old waste. Like, what's the point of having gone through, learning how to live when, friends have been killed, and brothers have been injured, and learning how to go through school, applying to school, working in a terrible situation, and working and not being passive aggressive and actually do the work that I'm paid to do, even though my bosses are crazy. Learning how to apply to school again and go back to school, and moving to another state. All of these things that I've learned how to do, they are no good to me if I hold on to them by myself. I mean, I might as well have just not learned them. I struggled to be able to get through a lot of the things that I have. And if I don't pass it on, then, what's the point? And I learned that. So whenever I went back to school, eventually I was able to apply to school, to transfer to a school out of the Bethany house. I paid for it myself. I bought a car there myself. I learned how to function as a human being, through being at the house and throughout the years. And then whenever I graduated, I was able to go to grad school. And I don't know if anyone knows this. I'm going to tell you a secret, something I've learned. People who are not from here don't know how to do AA. If you go to another state, their meetings are all messed up. The women aren't doing what they should be doing. No one would get coffee with me. I asked someone to go get coffee before a meeting, and they took me to Wawa, which is like Sheetz. It was really, really difficult. I did as much as I could, but it was very, very difficult to have the same type of AA experience that I had in North Carolina, because it's not the same AA experience in Delaware as it is in North Carolina. And so I did what I could, and whereas before I was incredibly involved with committee work, in Delaware I got sponsees. I was finally able to work one-on-one with women, and that was such a gift because I didn't have time to do anything else. Because when I wasn't able to devote all that energy to committee work like I was, I transferred that over to my bigger community, my community at school. I became the student representative for school, and basically I had a really hard time that first year getting to know people. And I know how to move. I enjoy moving, but I had a really hard time that first year. And so my second year there, I made a point of helping out the person who was coming in behind me and helping their experience to be a little bit better and a little bit easier. I planned a study abroad trip for my school, and I went back to the place that I first started drinking. For a 10-day program, we went back, and for a year and a half, I planned this. We planned the transportation, I planned the lectures, I planned the housing, the budget, trying to get people to enroll, just every little bit of it I was able to do myself. And that was crazy. I mean, this is going from someone who, in my third year of sobriety, I was going to school in Raleigh, and I had an 8 a.m. class, my only 8 a.m. class, those 2 years I was there. And my teacher pulled me into his office and asked me if I had a drinking problem, because I could never show up to my 8 a.m. class. And if I did, my eyes were bloodshot because the only way I could make it there was by staying up all night the night before. This is not manageable behavior. And this is, like I said, this is an ongoing thing, learning how to be where I am, where I'm supposed to be, wake up in the morning. It's an ongoing problem. Going from that in sobriety to being responsible for 8 people and an 80-year-old professor who had never traveled overseas before, who, I was able to go to a vodka tasting. I organized a vodka tasting for them because this was about them and not about me. And granted, I will probably never do that again. Apparently, pickle tastings are much more popular and, a lot better for me. But I was able to live through that. I was able to go through that, to focus on other people, to realize that even though for me I was there to confront old ghosts, to confront my ghost of not being able to function, to see old teachers and old friends of my ex-boyfriend, to be able to walk those streets and revisit and get new experience there, that was amazing. But that's not why I was doing it. I was doing it to be able to help the people, to teach the people and give other people that experience. And so it wasn't about me. And that's something I learned through AA. That's something I learned through service work, where I'm doing this stuff. Believe me, if I'm chairing a committee, no one's sitting there giving me applause. It's a struggle to get people to do what they're going to say they do, and that's not that doesn't make me any better than anyone else. It's such a relief to be able to be one among many. Not better than anyone else around me, and not the worst person in the room. I'm now able to, my career now, I'm able to work in my career. I'm back in North Carolina, I'm back in Raleigh, and I'm able to give back to my community, and be a part of my community. That's something I've learned. I'm not going to feel like I belong to any group of people until I'm proactive in trying to help them and be a part of them. I'm not going to feel like I belong in AA until I get in the middle and I start calling people and asking them to coffee, or I start just showing up to random campouts, or going to workshops that intergroup is having, or whatever. Until I do the legwork and until I put myself forward a little bit, I can be completely separated all I want. And it's such a huge difference from being that girl playing with the stick in the woods to being someone who is actively trying to be a part of my AA community, my family, my town, my work, everything. So I always talk to him. I always want to say more because there are so many lessons that I've learned in AA. But really, it's just AA has given me such a big gift, and I really want to thank you all.